I remember exactly the moment when I was maybe not even out of CNN just yet. I left in April of 2021. And somewhere in there, I remember having a phone call with a really powerful woman. And I said to her, I think I could have stayed in and done some sort of special correspondent work or maybe become an anchor elsewhere. And I just decided, F it. Like, I want to be in longer form storytelling. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've gotten to one of the highest positions in the game. Like, I want to try something else. And so I really totally bet on myself. But if you had told me 4 years ago, like how hard that road would be, I'm glad I didn't know. I'm also glad that that was the choice I made. You know, when you are in a machine for 20 years, you know, whether it was local news or for CNN for me, you're just like part of you're used to being part of a machine. And I think the biggest adjustment and what kicked off my unraveling was being drop kicked out of my dream job. But then also this like, wait, who am I if I don't have this container, this fancy container that is CNN around me? Wait, who am I if I'm not CNN's Brooke Baldwin and I'm just Brooke? It was a lot, Lindsay, in the beginning of just like, who actually am I?
Hey everybody, I'm Lindsay Zarniak, and this is Things No One Tells You. This is a podcast about the behind the scenes moments that shape who we are, those things that also are really relatable and really connect us. So each week I'm going to talk with newsmakers, trailblazers in the worlds of sports, entertainment, all things, but also everyday folks, people who are talking about the real stuff that no one tends to share. Follow me at Lindsay Zarniak and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review Things No One Tells You wherever you like to listen. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. Welcome to TNOTY. That stands for Things No One Tells You, but we love the ring that it's got to it, TNOTY, and we thank you for being here to listen to this episode of the Things No One Tells You podcast. I'm Lindsay Zarniak, and this has been so much fun because I really feel like I am learning something new from each guest or guests that we're talking to on our show. And it is oftentimes things that I had no idea that they were going to bring to the table, which is really the part that I love. I also wanted to take a minute before we jump into this week's guest to thank those of you who I've heard from after last week's episode with Neha Rush, who wrote the book, The Power Pause. I loved hearing what you had to say and look forward to chatting more about that and about this episode and my guest, who I just can't wait for you to hear from, Brooke Baldwin. Brooke is such an established journalist. She hosted her own show at CNN for years. Now she is moving that to creating her own platform, as well as still hosting other things and also entrepreneurial endeavors. So I cannot wait to dive into her reinvention and what she's doing along the way. It's fascinating. But first, I want to give you a little snippet into what's going on in my life. So I'm wondering if you guys are in this boat where you hit a certain point when, like, maybe it's like a summer thing, but I all of a sudden have found like this intense need to purge. And have you ever had a room or a closet you walk into in your house and it's like you can't even get in and you forget stuff that you had? I mean, I just went through sunscreens that were from 2023. Thank God I'm not putting them on my kids. I, though, also have been really wanting to just like rearrange. And I had this thought when I was working on my own closet, because I was just trying to purge things. I'm like, if I don't feel good in this, why am I even keeping this? And then I had this thought like, what if I really only wore the clothes that just made me feel really excited to leave the house? And I feel like maybe that would be like 7 items that I have. But then I started to do that and I found this pair of pants in my closet that I've been looking for like 2 years. And I was like, this is absolutely pathetic. So I'm just wondering how you guys do the purges in your house. And I have also identified that oftentimes it is helpful if you have someone. My 8-year-old daughter, turns out, is super great at that in organizing because it will just tell it like it is. She's like, nope, don't like it. And sometimes I have to fight with her because it'll be something that is intentionally for her that she still has tags on. But I'm like, no, you're wearing this and that's it. But anyway, for whatever reason, it's just always difficult to do that for yourself. And I think in some ways that ties into what we're talking about today in this podcast episode with Brooke, because it's like, for some reason, sometimes it is hard to listen to your own inner voice. The very first job I had after I graduated college was behind the scenes at CNN. But a few years ago, I found myself with an opportunity to work on CNN Sports with the team there. And so I went and I was an anchor and a reporter for them. It was a blast. I had to be on at 4:30 in the morning, and that meant I had to leave my house at 2:45. So, that was so crazy, and I remember that wake up call because I was like, not wake up call, I mean, it was like my phone going off with my alarm, but, that was such an interesting, like, body required shift because 2:45, I mean, that's different than, like, 4:30 because you're going to bed, you're, like, really timing the amount of hours that you're getting. But anyway, I remember that, and what I loved is there is something about being up like way before everyone else that I really enjoy. Um, but also in the afternoons, oftentimes I would hit a wall. So now when I watch my husband, when he comes home and he's still got like work tasks to do, I'm always like, oh my gosh, like that's the part people don't see is like the amount of work you have after the show that you've done, which I think he does really well, which is very cool. But anyway, back to my time at CNN Sports, that is when I first really saw Brooke Baldwin. And Brooke was hosting her own show. She was like wildly successful at CNN. But I remember specifically this one morning where she came in and she walked across the newsroom and she just has such a presence about her. And that was what struck me right out of the gate. I was just like, oh, wow, like I would love to just sit down and talk to her. I had to go get on set, so I wasn't able to. But anyway, Brooke has always been someone that I have admired from afar because she is extremely relatable on television. I really feel that from her watching her, but I also just think she's very sure of herself. She knows what she's talking about, but she also knows how to really connect with the people that she's working with, whether it's someone who's a colleague who she's co-anchoring with or an analyst or if it's a guest. So I'm like, she's awesome. I also really truly believe that she is a phenomenal writer. So before we move on, a little levity. All right. If you follow me on social, then you know I love to do a joke of the day. So here's this one. What did the sad tortilla chip say? I don't want a taco about it. I love it. And the reason I picked this one is because Brooke Baldwin is doing the opposite of that in her new journey, right? Brooke is talking about and bringing people on along for the ride in this new normal, this new world that she's sort of navigating. And it is absolutely awesome. I find myself, I've subscribed to her Substack. I read the things that she writes about. And every time I'm just like, oh, yeah, me too. Like, I just love what she's doing. And I think she's really hitting the nail on the head of some of the direction of where like our industry is really going. But backing it up, as I said, she was an anchor at CNN for several years, so good at what she does. And I've heard so many stories of reinvention. We've talked a lot about it here in this space. But the one Brooke Baldwin shared with me still leaves me thinking. So in this episode, Brooke Baldwin, my friend, opens up about the unraveling that changed everything for her from losing her dream job to finding out how to redefine her voice to what it really means to come home to yourself. Tell me about what's behind you, your
Okay, so
background, which is amazing.
I'm in my office here in Venice, California, and of all the sort of souvenirs, this is like the one thing I actually kept from my time at CNN. It's this giant poster from
Oh,
Betty White and Ashley Graham and Tracy Reese and Pat Benatar, Issa Rae and DVF and Sheryl Crow and Ava DuVernay. Like I keep these women behind me with me, but also the poster represents a really big no I got from my boss because I knew I wanted to focus and tell women's stories. This was
mhm.
after the 2016 presidential election when I was backstage at the Women's March in Washington, which was bananas.
Wow.
And I remember, like going to my boss and I was like, I'm telling you, like something is happening with women in this country. At the time I was hosting 2 hours by myself. I was like, can I have 2 minutes once a week on my show to tell women's stories?
Oh,
And
that's such a good idea too. Like, and I can tell, like, that's one of those things, like, you just feel it in here. You're like, this,
I
right?
knew it. I was
Yes.
Lindsay, I was possessed. But when I when I asked him, "Can I please have 2 minutes on my own show?" He said no. He said no. And so I turned that
Like
no
the boss or like the
to the
EP boss?
boss,
Okay, got
the
it.
president of CNN. I went straight to the big kahuna, and he was like, "No." And I went home and cried.
But what was the reason? Can you
I think we knew I think actually at that time, like if you go back to, January of that would have been 2017 when,
Yeah.
we had a new administration suddenly inaugurated and we were just starting to realize like how crazy, how insane the news cycle would be. And I honestly think it was as simple as he didn't want to give up 2 minutes. I think he probably had some sort of spidey sense that we would need to cover this White House 24/7, 365 and there would be no room for what I wanted to do. And my lesson, which is why I keep this here, is I turned sort of that exit into an entrance into creating this series for CNN.com, which then like planted the seeds of me writing this book about the collective power of women, which, you know,
Became Huddle.
became Huddle, which became so much of who I am. So it was like a big fat no changed my life. That's why that's here.
I love that so much. And the no, so when you started doing that series that you envisioned for
Yeah.
CNN.com,
Yeah.
how did you get to that place?
I when you are so passionate about something, it is in your body. I was possessed, I was myopic. And so the second I got the no I got, I cried about went home and cried about it that night. And I was like, okay, who will say yes to me? So I went to the head of CNN Digital at the time. I had a great relationship with him, Andrew Morse. And I think I was like, "Can we please go out for a cup of coffee?" And I basically pitched him the series, and he, without even, he was like, "Yes, yes,
Oh, that is so good. That's such a big, you're right. It's such a big lesson. I love what you just said about when you get the big fat no, like who will maybe give me the yes. And
someone
that
will do a yes, someone you just cannot give up."
you just made me think about, which I have not thought about for a long time. The only time I cried was in a news director's office because I was in Washington, DC doing local sports, and my boss, I was pitching him on why we needed to be at this NASCAR race
Yeah,
because being in DC, Joe Gibbs had been obviously the coach of the Redskins at that time, and then was now doing motorsports, and there was some big event, but I was so passionate about it. It was like I felt it. There was no reason we should not be doing it, and it was a hard no. It
yeah,
was, and I'm sure it was a budget no.
yeah, yeah.
But I was just like, and I knew I felt it in my face. I'm like, don't do this, don't do this. Everyone says don't do this. You know what I mean? But like
You were in the boss's office. You were in his office
oh,
as he
oh,
said no.
and yep, and so I couldn't stop, and I knew I was like, I was gonna cry, and so then I'm like, well, now I've just got to be compelling with it. Like I was like, he's not gonna say yes. I'm crying in his office, and I was like, you just don't. I don't know what I said, but I just had to get the heck out of there, and then I did, and I was fine. But it was not one of my brightest moments, and it's so funny how that stuff so consumes you, and like
Yes.
how,
What
yeah,
did you end up doing? Did you end up
we didn't go down there, but I do think the lesson for me in that was there was a reason we couldn't do it, and I think it was budget, and that was unfortunate, and it sucked, and I was mad and pissed, and no one else listened to me, but it's like, what do you do with that? There wasn't someone else that could have given me a yes in that situation because I didn't have the money to, like, fly our whole team down there, but
right?
I think I just used that no at that moment to sort of be like, just continue to champion what it is you believe in, and, like, at
Yes.
some point,
Yes.
people will listen, which I don't know. I it's like, so I think that, I was reading again today, like, some of the stuff, like, I had read your Vanity Fair article a
Mhm.
while ago, like, last year when it came out after you left CNN. The article, if people hadn't seen it, was about your exit and how it gave leaving there gave you your voice.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I was like, there's just something about what you're doing with your Substack, with Unraveling, like, because this happened to me too when I was listening to something that you posted there, because I do subscribe, last week. But I was like getting so inspired, but fired up to the point that I was in this coffee shop this morning and I was like, mother, oh, like I was like, and I swear, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, and it was because I was reading back over the story of your ending days there and some of the stuff that I hope, that maybe you'll share today. But I think that I have, in some ways, I have similar experiences. And I just think that also, though, the
Yeah.
things that you are uncovering, that you are now opening doors to, it is everything. Like that is so empowering for people that are in it, people
Yeah.
that don't even know they'll be in it. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Right?
I always say we're either about to unravel, we are unraveling, or we have unraveled. And I think our story, like, I'm not special. My story is sadly, my story
Mhm.
is not unique. And I hope that just my presence and my truth helps, and yours, like helps to open doors for other women and men and just knowing like they're not alone. And also it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, and the power in connecting about it, I think, and, like, relatability. In sports, I always say that, like, I think the way that sometimes fans are made if people, like, don't understand a sport or whatnot is they hook themselves to a player or to a team, and because they're following along in the storytelling aspect of it, and I believe what that really is at some point, there's something that they relate to, like, maybe there's a NASCAR driver who's sponsored by Cheez-Its and you love Cheez-Its, or maybe it's, like, the NBA player, who's, like, mom is from your hometown, whatever.
Yes, yes.
Um, my point is that I think it comes down to connection a lot. I do really wanna hear what is one of the things that no one tells you that you've experienced on your journey along the way, but I also just think it would be helpful maybe if you could explain a little bit of how you got from like, how I first knew you was as the CNN anchor. I actually started at CNN, and then I left and did the sports thing, and then I came back for a stint, and I remember seeing you walking through the New York office, and I was like, "Oh my god, Brooke, she's so beautiful and smart." You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Oh, there." And yeah.
I'm gonna surprise you and take you a step back, which is we actually met in Washington, DC. Lindsay, was working at Fox 5 up in Friendship Heights as a freelance reporter for 2 years. And I remember you being this Channel 4 big badass, like sports reporter, sports anchor. And I was like, I love her. I
Oh, that's
really
so
admired you from afar. And we were in a room or at an awards banquet or something together.
yeah.
And I know I went up to you and I was like, hi, my name's Brooke. And then cut to several years later, we are like in the makeup room at CNN
Yes.
Network, and I was like, "Of course I know you, and are you like, welcome to the team?" And I've always been a fan of yours from afar.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Likewise. That's
thank
so awesome. And so
thank
I think this is so great. I kind of wish I was your roommate. Um, Although I do love my husband, but I just, yeah, it's I don't know, it's so funny. It's so funny how people take these different journeys and, like,
Yes,
mine, I would have never expected at first that I would be in sports, and then after that, now it's like I wouldn't have expected to be doing what I'm doing now, and I'm sensing obviously that you feel the same way, but
yes.
what was your path, if you
Yeah.
can fill in the gaps?
Do you want me to go back to, like, local news and sort of how I got into TV, or where do
I
you want
mean,
me to
n
start?
maybe let's start from CNN because, we can go back to how you got into it too, but just because I really would love to talk about what got you to sharing the things you're sharing in Unraveling and on that
Yeah.
platform.
Yes, yes. So I came to CNN and I want to say it was so I left Washington. I moved to Atlanta. It was like 2008 maybe. It was just in time for the entire like economy to crash. And I
Mhm.
moved to Atlanta and I was going to be a freelance correspondent and they at CNN were like, we're freezing all the positions. And I basically squatted in an office and put my name on a post-it on the wall for a really
Really?
uncomfortable amount of time, and people were like, "Who is this Brooke Baldwin, and why does she keep showing up in this building? But okay, she seems kinda nice, so whatever, we'll let her, like, try to pitch stories." Anyway, cut to I eventually get hired. I get hired as a correspondent, I become an anchor, and then I hosted my own show. I was the only woman at CNN during that time with 2 hours all by myself.
Amazing.
And I did that. I had my own show for maybe over 10 years. And then I found out in January of 2021, it was literally the day that Trump was impeached for the second time. That's how I remember the day that I got the phone call that I too would be out. And so I left in April of that year, which happened to coincide with when my book came out,
Mhm.
Untitled. And then I've been out now, like on the other side for 4 years.
So, did you sense that you were going to be on the outs?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I felt like I was a top-rated anchor. I felt beloved by my peers and my viewers. Then COVID happened, and I got really sick in April of
Uh-huh.
2000. I was crazy. Like I became the national news, and I remember my boss called me at home every single day, and I was kind of like, "Huh, okay, call me at home. It's sort of interesting." And then I came back, and it was just such an odd time for everyone. And then I think overall, when you're at a big network and you can feel change is coming, like they're going to change the lineup or the anchors or what have you. And somewhere in there, he had taken an hour away from me, so I was hosting a 1 hour show.
Yeah.
I really got an explanation as to why, even though I asked. I got crickets.
I
And
by the way, not to interrupt you, I do think that that's something oftentimes I wonder if that's if it is a female thing or maybe it's not just an every person thing, but I really do believe that. That is like instinct. It's just or intuition. It's
yes,
this intuition because I also had that experience and it's just wild how like sometimes you're like, "Wait a minute, I can't be right." What?
yes.
Okay, keep going.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. No, intuition, I mean, our knowing is a powerful thing, and I've felt mine and I've heard mine ever since I was a little girl, but it's so easy to, like,
Yeah.
cover it with muck and the mud and ego and whatever, but I felt something was off, but did I think I would be out? No, I didn't see that coming. So I was like, okay, maybe after 10 years, I'm just going to have like a 1 hour show in the afternoon. But then no, like I was literally sitting in Connecticut at a diner eating an omelet. And I got this phone call from my agent. It wasn't even my boss. And she was just like, well, I don't have good news. And I remember putting my fork down and I was looking at my husband at the time and just like thumbs down and
Oh.
listened to her, and there wasn't really an explanation, and I was just like, it was like this out of body experience, like the cartoons when they see stars. It's just like I didn't really totally understand what was happening, and there was discussion about, but you choose when you want to leave, and let's figure out the financial. It just didn't. None of it made sense. And the crazy part, I've actually never said this before, but I can't remember how old I was at the time, like early 40s. I was about to buy my very first apartment in New York City. My first phone call wasn't to like my mom or my best friend, it was to my broker in Manhattan. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't buy this apartment. I can't finally have a home. I had never owned a home in my whole life. And
Oh, wow.
that was because we were literally about to transfer a chunk of money the next day, and I had to call all of that off, like pull it all back, and then, start calling people who I could trust to just tell them what was happening in my life. It was terrible.
And were you like, was there a part of you that was in any shape or form relieved because maybe there was something underneath or no, were you just like in shell shocked?
I'm a journaler. I've been journaling since I was 18. And for, I would say, probably like 2, 3 years leading up to the phone call over the omelet, I was definitely unhappy. Like, I didn't like how we were covering what we were covering. I didn't like how I was being told to cover certain things. I felt like I didn't have as much of a voice as I used to on my show, all of those things.
Mhm.
But also, I just didn't wanna disappoint that little girl who, like, lived in rural West Virginia in her 20s and, anchored a show with a man 3 times her age, while Dottie was here on
Yeah.
64. Like, I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna quit, and so
And
I
that was your by the way, was that the dream? Like the dream because when we were talking about where we start with this, I was wondering as a kid,
oh my
what
god.
did you expect and hope that your career would be?
Was from Atlanta. Like, I grew up going to Braves games.
Yeah.
We literally bring binoculars to Fulton County Stadium was the stadium, and we were huge baseball fans, and I remember, like, we would bring the binoculars to try to find, like, Jane Fonda and Ted Turner would often be somewhere on the field before the game, and
It's
I
so
would be
funny.
like, "Oh my god, it's Ted Turner," the cable news pioneer, founder of CNN. I mean, I was literally born, Lindsay, like a mile down the road a year before CNN was born. And so I was always very aware of CNN. So it was either like, I'm going to go work at CNN or I'm going to go work at the Today Show. It was like Today Show or
Yes.
CNN or bust. And, I got there.
Ugh, which is so amazing. I mean, it's the whole thing is amazing, and it's funny because, like, my dream actually well, I really wanted to be on MTV. MTV was
Oh,
like that was
so
hands I
Countdown to Billy
spent
Brown. Oh,
oh,
it was
I
so
yep,
cool.
or Martha Quinn. I wanted Martha Quinn's job, the VJ, you know?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I was like, I also that or I wanted to do the Today Show, which is ironic now that I am married to a man that does the Today
Yes.
Show. One
Yes.
of my best friends when I was in, shortly out of college once was like, "Well, maybe it'll be your husband on the Today Show." And I was like, "That feels weird." Like,
That is wild. That is
so
wild.
I know. And you know what's funny though, when you talk about the Post-it that you put up,
Yep.
my very first job out of college was a video journalist at CNN because I sent my stuff everywhere. I
VJ.
really Yeah, I was a VJ. I really wanted to go so okay, wait. I didn't even think about that. I was a VJ, but I was a VJ at CNN, not at MTV, right? It's so funny
Right.
because that was the program. But so,
Well,
I
very cool. That's a
it was
very cool out of college position to
it
get.
was amazing.
You
But
were
what
in a
was my lesson in that was I really was, like, doing everything I could to try to go to New York because I just had this such stars in my eyes about, like, New York, and then I found that program and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." But it was really, there are very not so many spots.
yes, no,
So
very
I
cheap.
kept calling, and one of these days and it says, like, "Don't call." And this is one of my true beliefs, like, really, like, for people that are in the job seeking stage or about to be, I really think sometimes if it says, "Don't call," you call, like, you politely, but I think that's how, you have to go for it. And so I remember calling and I got a man's voice on the other line, and he was like, I was like, "I was just calling to make sure that you guys have my resume, da da da." And he was like, "Oh," he asked my name. He's like, "Actually, it's here in the stack." And had I not called,
Oh, wow.
like, it wasn't at the top of that stack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he actually looked through, and because it was maybe one of, like, number 12 down for whatever reason, he, like, pulled it out and talked to me for a few minutes, and I really believe that that's how that worked. And so it's really funny because I think hearing about you putting Post-its and just not, like, refusing to go away, you
Oh
know?
my gosh, we have to be I mean, I was rejected from my CNN internship, similar story to you, and I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I called, you called, I called, I talked to a man named Willie, and I was like, "Willie, this is Brooke Baldwin, and I will literally do anything in the building, just throw me a bone." And he did, you know? You have to just there's, like, this fine line, and again, like, where are you from? Are you from the South?
Virginia. I'm from
Virginia.
Northern Virginia is where I grew up.
From Atlanta, like, being from the South, I feel like it's sort of, like, in us to, like, "Ooh, don't push," or, like, "Ooh,
Yes.
don't do too much," but there's this and you don't wanna be too aggressive, it's this, like, fine, like, have grace, little bit of, pushiness, and obviously we had it, and it worked for us.
Yeah, which yes. Um, but it's also funny because, one of the things that really resonated with me was in and by the way, do I call it like I know Unraveling is your platform. Do I call it the Substack? Like
Yeah,
the
I would
sub
just call it, my
you know,
Substack or my
your
Unraveling
Substack.
Substack, either way.
So I know that this has been around for a bit, but I just find the whole thing, the whole platform I think is amazing
Oh,
and fascinating,
thank
right? You're welcome.
tell me why, tell me why.
Because I think you're so honest, and I think you're so vulnerable, but in a really relatable and not cheesy way. Like, just hearing your experiences, it is almost like you're taking people in real time along with you on this journey of just your life and what you're doing and how you're like, some of the questions that I was like, "I really wanna find out what your relationship is like now
Mm,
with your cell phone." I know that sounds stupid, but, like, how
very
that
much
stuff has changed, like,
yes.
what has do you feel that your identity has shifted? Like, for yourself, the way you view yourself, like, your relationships, I know you were married
Yes,
and
yes.
that ended, and so I'm curious. Like, there are all these things,
Girl, where do you wanna start?
I
Where
know,
do you
so
wanna start?
I think we should start with you leave CNN, and now you're in it, and, like, you're figuring out what's next so that you can bridge us to Unraveling, however
Yeah.
succinct you wanna share that.
Yeah, I would say I remember exactly the moment when, I think I was maybe not even out of CNN just yet. I left in April of 2021, and somewhere in there, I remember having a phone call with a really powerful woman, and I said to her, I could have stayed in news. Let me say that. Like,
Yeah.
I think I was, I think I could have stayed in and done some sort of special correspondent work, or maybe become an anchor elsewhere. And I just decided, I was like, F it. Like, I wanna be in longer form storytelling. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've gotten to the, like, one of the highest positions in the game. Like, I wanna try something else. And so I really totally bet on myself. But if you had told me 4 years ago, like, how hard that road would be, and just how hard it would be to like, like sort of turn the ship. I'm glad I didn't know. I'm also glad that that was the choice I made. And so over the course of those 4 years, I did various things. Like I got a pretty cool phone call from Netflix about,
Yeah.
hosting a social experiment show, and I've done a lot of public speaking around my book Huddle. But when you are in a machine for 20 years, whether it was local news or for CNN for me, you're just like part of you're used to being part of a machine. And I think the biggest adjustment and what kicked off my unraveling was being drop kicked out of my dream job. But then also this like, wait, who am I if I don't have this container, this fancy container that is CNN around me? Wait, who am I if I'm not CNN's Brooke Baldwin and I'm just Brooke? It was a lot, Lindsay, in the beginning of just like, who actually am I? That was like my first, biggest sort of like just working to figure that out. And then once I have figured that out, then I started really writing this Unraveling Substack in hopes of sharing parts of my life and my truth with others and walking this road together.
I also think, I mean, you're obviously a tremendous writer.
Thank
And
you.
that's a big part of why I'm also like, oh, but a couple things there. There's something really that I'm unpacking that I've been thinking about a lot about our childhoods.
Mm,
And, I had an extremely wonderful childhood. I think at some point, and I don't know, it's like, you have this dream to do this thing, and it sort of becomes like, well, what happens if that's not the thing, or if you're not doing that? And I think there's some level of value that we either don't put on ourselves, or that I don't know. Now I'm talking in circles, but I really think it's interesting when you think about what the expectations were, and I'm not saying anyone else does this, but I don't know. I think it's really just a curious thing how we move through life. And I was so driven, and I'm still very driven, but like
yes.
at some point I was like, my first time at ESPN, I realized, whoa, I really haven't worked with a lot of other women in
Mm,
sports, because if you're at local, usually there's one, token female sportscaster in the department. And
yeah.
that was a great experience to be around a lot of women, but it also at times felt really competitive. And I think I at times had tunnel vision, and in hindsight, maybe would have checked that a little bit and been like, let me like just like try to nurture connections and like relationships. But I think like I was just so, oh my gosh, I want to be the best,
Hmm.
And like
Hmm.
that's a weird thing to say, but it's kind
Why?
of,
Why?
well, because, like, you just realize it's like, I guess I didn't wanna fail, but I never thought about failure, but I was just, maybe it's also the journalistic bug, like, like, part of what really fuels me, I love old school, just you're trying to, talk to sources, you're doing the thing, like, that really, I love that.
Same.
And, like, access, like, that's also,
Yeah.
yeah, the crickets thing also. So one other thing I've been thinking about a lot is like, and I was actually talking to two girlfriends that are in sports television last night, and we were talking about experiences where there's been a no, but no one's explained the no,
Oh my gosh.
or you don't hear from anyone. And so, and I found myself saying, now, if so and so could have just said, we went another direction, we're not doing that. But I'm like, why, if there's a big opportunity and if you're maybe in the running for it, why does maybe sometimes someone say, "Well, we're gonna call her," and then they just don't ever call?
Yeah.
And, like, isn't that confusing? Or, like, wouldn't it be better to just hear someone say, "Sorry, you're not the one we chose." But and they were all like, "Lindsay, get over yourself." Like, none of us, and then they started sharing their experiences with it, and my friend was like, "Oh, you'll like this one." And I was like, "Whoa, okay. Yeah, you're right."
Wow. Wow. So you guys were like doing the like one
Oh,
upping
yeah.
cricket stories. I mean, we've all gotten the crickets, and I mean, don't even get me. There's like crickets in the personal life, but then crickets when it comes to work. I think a lot of it is these people in positions of power probably just like don't want to deal. And because they have this power, they don't feel that they owe us an explanation, which by the way, I'm calling bullshit on that. I think
Mm,
that looking back at the moment when after 10 years, was hosting this 2 hour show, and then like one day I'm hosting a 1 hour show. And I remember emailing my boss and got crickets and just decided to like accept it because there was this other change that had happened that I was grateful for. And I, again, like as a woman, I'm like, oh, I'm just so grateful for this one thing. I'm
Right.
not even gonna bother to try to understand why like my job has totally changed. And that's on me. I actually am gonna own that. I looking back, I probably should have, and had it not been COVID, I mean, that was an extenuating circumstance, but if my boss had been in his office or, you know what, like he has a cell phone, I had a cell phone number, like I could have called and I didn't. And I think that's on me to demand kindly, demand the explanation because I'd earned
Mhm.
what I had every day for a really long time. And so I think it's okay to make people feel uncomfortable. And if they're in a position of power, like, and there is an explanation, we can take it. We can take
Yeah,
it. We
and you're
deserve
right, and no one writes those rules, like, don't it's not appropriate to follow up and ask,
it. Yeah.
right? They don't exist, and
Right.
maybe,
Right. We
you
make them
know
up. We make them up. We
yeah,
tiptoe around. I just feel like that needs to change. The culture, like a workplace environment, especially among women, where we do tiptoe. We do talk to our girlfriends. I can't tell you how many times I sat in my office and I'm like, somebody would like click the blinds close and we would like spill the tea and somebody would weep and I'd give advice. But like you got to take it two steps further and demand or ask for or get curious about the why, and that's okay.
yeah, and B, there's a way to do it, to your point, it's like you do it kindly, you do it respectfully. One other thing I do still believe in is, like, the power of the written thank you, and
Mm,
that can be in an email, but it also, goes even farther if you can do a handwritten note. Like, I've had people be like, if I've done that, oh, there was one NFL coach who was like, I don't remember the last time I got a handwritten whatever.
wow.
And I was like, that's awesome. Like that is, so I think it's more rare, especially now. Emails are still great, but
Totally agree. Totally agree. Your mom raised you right.
well,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you, Mom. Um, so when you started on this quest to do the Substack
Yeah.
and started really focusing on that, like what were your revelations
Mm.
that surprised you?
Well, I think, what set me up for it was I did write that bombshell piece in Vanity Fair, and I remember before that piece came out, I was on my hands and knees in my bathroom, like, snot pouring out of my face, I was terrified.
When you had written it, but it hadn't been published.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
I was just like I was telling the truth, and it was
love it.
terrifying for me. And so once I was able to, like, rip that really big Band-Aid off, I was kinda like, "Huh, okay." Nobody came after me because everybody knows I was actually telling the truth, and, I felt really supported and really seen, and I heard from a lot of people I never even
Really?
met in my life. Okay, I think I'm gonna follow my nose on this, and I'm gonna start this Substack. I love Liz Gilbert. I love her Letters from Love, and she had asked me to participate in one, and just got introduced to Substack, which is basically an analog newsletter.
Mhm.
And I one night, I remember my partner was, like, away for the evening, I had the house to myself, might have poured a glass or 2 of wine, and, might have had a little chocolate. I'm not saying I needed to be, like, not fully present to continue telling my truth, but I'm just being super real and honest with you right now.
Yeah,
I was like, "If I'm committing," I don't know how to, I'm sure like you, like, "If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it." And so between my sips of wine, I'm like sitting, in our backyard under this beautiful cotton candy sunset here in Southern California, and I start writing, just like, here's who I am. This is who I have been. This is probably how many of you have known me. This is who I am now, and these are the things that are on my heart. These are the things that I'm curious about, and I'm going to tell a lot of truths. And it may make some people in my life, including my own self or my family or whomever, uncomfortable, but it's the truth that has legs. And that was how I started. And I literally just like, I didn't even map it out. I wrote this first one, and then each and every week I just feel, as we talk about, intuition or that
yeah.
knowing, I feel in my body, like what's the thing that's in my body, on my heart this week that feels like I really need to talk about. And there are some weeks that some things are just too personal to share, but that's very rare. I kind of have shared a lot of things, and it's been such a blessing.
I loved, the writing that you did about the goo, and
Mm,
then talking about also the question of, like, what do you do now? Or something like that. And you were also sharing about the Netflix job and how it took a year, right?
Crickets. Crickets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I was talking about, in these moments of our unraveling, there's so much like that we don't know. We are the goo. We are the imaginal cells. We are that being that is inside the chrysalis pre-butterfly. And am so blown away by that metaphor. And so I was making in one of my writings recently, I was making this point that, when you are the goo, and I was at a wedding and everyone was like,
Mhm.
asking, the dreaded question of like, "What are you up to?" And I was like,
Ah.
like, how do I answer? Like, I feel like I'm doing everything, but nothing also feels like everything. And I was telling the story of I remember when I left CNN, and then a couple months later, I bought myself a one-way ticket to Los Angeles because I was betting on myself and betting on, working in longer form storytelling. And I just like took a bunch of meetings. It's what they say in LA. You take a meeting, it's lunch. And 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 I met this guy, Rich, at like a coffee shop on Sunset for he works at Netflix. He's like a casting guy. And I met him. We, had a whole conversation for an hour. He bounced, and I was just like, I literally remember sitting there in the booth being like, did he even like me? I literally don't even know. I just couldn't tell, didn't know. And, I didn't hear from him or anyone from Netflix for, I wanna say it was a year and a half. And then
Wow.
I was
So
like
you assumed what?
I was
Just
like, "Okay, Netflix isn't in the cards," you know?
yeah.
And then I remember I was ringing in, I forget which year, but it was January of 2022 because I was sitting in a hotel room in San Francisco about to go into the Hoffman Institute and change my life, little did I know.
Whole different sidebar combo we have to I'm
Totally.
dying to hear about this. One of my
But,
girlfriends
like,
is
I
one.
swear to God, it was like the universe it was such a blessing to get this piece of information before going into Hoffman. It was 2 days before, and I get this phone call from my team, and they were like, "Netflix is, interested in having you, host this reality show." I'd gone through a couple rounds of, Zoom interviews and, again, had no idea if they liked me or not. I just showed up as myself, and I got the job. And it was just like a total Lindsay, coming from, interviewing politicians and world leaders in science
Yes.
to, standing on a cliff and talking to reality show contestants. And I would have the producers come in every day to brief me, and they'd be like, "Okay, Brooke, we're gonna pull out candles today. And like this is the order of things." And I'd be like, "Okay, okay. I got this, guys. I got this." But it was so fun, and it just
Mm.
was like the professional amuse bouche I needed from like my CNN super serious world into whatever I'm up to today. So,
Yeah, and
you
the
know,
storytelling is like the thread, it's like still awesome. It's not that different when you slice it down the middle and it's like, "Oh, you're telling people stories sort of," you're
that's right. No, I absolutely am. I mean, at the end of the day, like I'm a student of humanity, and to be able to,
yeah,
talk to all these extraordinary, ordinary humans in the Dominican Republic, like living their lives and hoping to like win money, and getting to ask them questions about themselves and their childhood and why they're making the choices they're making on this
yeah.
show. It was incredible. And I forgot the detail again. Like back post-its play a very big role in my
Right.
life.
I'm
Like
so glad you just said this because I was gonna point that out for you. Keep going. Yeah.
yes. So, like, between the Post-it that I stuck outside my office at CNN, basically, like, squatting and waiting for someone to hire me, to then the guy who I met for the coffee at Netflix, he later told me he put a Post-it of my name in his office, and so he stared at it for a year and a half, and then that's when I finally got the phone call to host this reality show on Netflix. So, you never know.
That just gave
Post-it.
me chills. That is like yes.
This podcast brought to you by
I
Post-it.
was just gonna say that. I know, and I know you're working on a podcast, yes?
I I I am. I'm working on developing one. Yes,
I
yes.
love
You should
this, but
guys
I
should all
really was
post
gonna
it.
say,
You
yeah,
should all post it.
you absolutely
That's
should.
hilarious.
That's, what a freaking awesome story.
Thank you.
Um, so wait, so and along the way, I did wanna fill in the gap. So you ended one relationship and then
Yes.
you started another one. So what happened?
Yes. Yes. So I was married for 4 years.
Okay.
We had actually moved out of the city. I was still working at CNN. He just really wanted to be rural. We moved to Connecticut, and
Oh.
it was beautiful. It was beautiful, but then I was like, when you're suddenly not working and all your friends are nowhere near you and you're like living in a beautiful place surrounded by trees and a river, but it was kind of like, what's happened to my life? Like everything has changed and I just felt so disconnected. But anyway, we ran out. I loved this man. I would not change a thing. We had the most beautiful wedding in upstate New York. My dog was our ring bearer.
Oh my God.
His mother is, I think of her a lot. But in the end, I think just, as it happens, you evolve separately. I think that what happened with me and CNN and the start of my unraveling took me in a whole other direction from the person that he married. And I was like doing all the reading and doing the work,
Mhm.
doing the therapy and going on the retreats and deepening my spiritual practices. And he was a Brit who was not interested in any of those things. And I wish him well, but I asked him for a divorce. I went to Hoffman. I had a giant spiritual aha.
And for people that don't know what Hoffman is, and it's funny because I really only got in the weeds with this because I ran into a really good girlfriend out on the train 2 weeks ago who said, "I just got back from Hoffman." And I thought of you because I knew that you had said you went, but I didn't know anything about it. Can you
Oh my
give us
God.
a little snippet of what?
Yes, I've never heard of the Hoffman Institute. I think Hoffman Institute is based in Northern California, and it's been in existence, I wanna say, for 50 plus years. It was started
Mhm.
by Bob Hoffman, and it really is it's a retreat where you go away for 6 or 7 days. They take away all of your electronics. You can't read books, you hand in your magazines, you don't talk about what you do for a living, you only go by
Wow.
your first name, and you go in deep into your childhood patterns. Even if, like you have an amazing childhood, they have you do all of these exercises. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of writing before you even arrive.
Wow, I didn't know that part of it.
Oh, yeah, and you just really look at who you were in your childhood, what patterns you learned or adapted from either of your parents, and how those patterns manifest in your current life today. I mean, that's just like the sort of tip of the iceberg of what it is, but it is deep, deep, deep work. And, either you take it with you when you leave and it changes you, or you revert back to kind of the ways you were. But it was I had no idea what I was getting into. I just knew that I wasn't feeling integrated in my life. I wasn't feeling whole. I was feeling pulled in all these different parts between my unhappiness in my marriage, not knowing what I was doing with my life professionally. I had lost my furry best friend of 19
Yeah.
years. I had moved away from the city that I knew and loved and away from my friends. It was just like lots was happening and I wasn't feeling whole. It's as simple as that. And I had 2 friends literally in the course of a week in 2 different states say to me, "Have you considered the Hoffman Institute?" I was like, "What is that?" By the second person, I was like, "I just signed up." You go to the website and it's like, "We believe in change." And you're just kinda like, "I don't really know what that means, but and, I put it off once, you like I signed up and I knew I wasn't ready yet for what I had a feeling would happen, and then I showed up the first week of the year. It was like a present to myself, and yeah, it was a wowza.
So then what?
So then you're staying in like a trailer in a single bed, like you're in summer camp, and you're looking around at people like, "What are you in for? What are you in for? What are"
Yeah.
And, it's they don't let you, it's like part of it is a quiet retreat in the beginning, so you're sort of like stuck in your thoughts. Damn it, like it really is the level of intentionality from these people. It's like Jedi level shit. And
Mhm.
there was this one day that changed my life, and I can't even go into the details in case someone's listening and might do it, but suffice to say, I had this experience involving, like, my own imagined death, and they talk a lot I'll say this, they talk a lot at Hoffman about the left road and the right road. Like, your left road in life is ego-led. where you are not making the decisions that are
Right.
in full alignment with who you are, and you're just, like, kinda cruising along. You probably lose some friends along the way, maybe lose some respect, but, like, that's the life you choose. And then there's the right road, which is, as we know, is a bit uphill, but it's the road you choose when you do feel in alignment, when you are in truth and integrity. And as I learned later, like, it really, you gotta figure out how to merge the 2 roads, but, I thought it was had to do with my right road, and, uh, there was this one day where they have you do this exercise outside, and it was pouring rain, and, I imagine, like, a version of my death on the right road, and it was profound, and my eyes were closed, and I'm standing in the pouring rain, and I'm imagining, what that would look like, that life. And I imagine this rainbow over the Caribbean Sea and lots of pug puppies. I had just lost my pug, and I opened my eyes standing in pouring Petaluma, California, and the rain stopped, and
Whoa.
I literally see a rainbow form in front of me. Like, I see it arc
Like,
in the sky, and I there was a part of my before I'd opened my eyes where I imagined my husband with someone else. I imagined me on my own or potentially partnered later. It was like I just had this hit, again, our intuition. I just felt this knowing, like, I wasn't meant to be with this person for the rest of my life. And when I saw that rainbow form, I dropped to my knees in tears in the mud and realized that I was worthy of the rainbow all to myself, meaning I was fully supported by, I believe in God. I believe in, I just, it just felt like a really sacred moment. It felt like a divine wink. And that saying, I am worthy of the rainbow all to myself means a lot to me in a lot of different ways. And I have it engraved in this ring that I wear. And I literally say it
wow.
out loud as I put this ring on me every single day to always remember that moment. And that's when I knew that I would be okay, and that's when I knew I needed to, like, love, but let my husband go.
That is such powerful stuff. I mean,
I still feel it.
wow.
Yeah, that's what Hoffman is. That's what Hoffman is, but that's what you bring to
Yeah.
Hoffman, you know?
You're just it's like it is you're finding your true self and the tools to get back there. So then what was that after you implement that and make that change? What was the next
Yeah.
change?
Making that change, it's like that was the beginning domino of the rest of the changes. It's like when I left that place and I was, like, leaping home to myself, I realized, like, I really became allergic to hanging out with anyone who was anywhere shy of in full authenticity and in full integrity. I'm just gonna be like, just I
Yeah.
couldn't do it, and that included one of my parents, who I made the very conscious choice to finally, like, let go of. And that was incredibly painful and also necessary. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't send him love, but, like,
Mhm.
I have an incredible group of friends, an incredible group of women who, I nurture those friendships and they nurture who I am. And I also didn't see this coming, like, met Peter at Hoffman, who is
Oh.
reason I am living in Los Angeles, and, that happened, and let me tell you, like, when people always ask me, they're like, "Oh, you met Peter at Hoffman is the least sexy place you can ever possibly imagine. You do not go there looking for partnership, you go there looking for yourself." And I really believe he was placed there for me. Halfway through the week, I was like, "Who is this tall New Yorker?" I didn't know who he was, what he really did. I just knew that we had a lot of shared commonality of, like, life experiences that we had shared, and I knew that I just kept wanting to talk to him, but I
Mhm.
also knew I was married And I didn't know if he was someone that I was just gonna meet that week and would show me, like, what else existed when I ever dipped my toe into the pond because I knew
Yeah,
I'd be leaving my husband. And, that also was a, "Oh, holy shit. There's this person here who, is gonna change your life." So, like, I changed my life. I had that agency when I was there, and I really believe he then was my gift, for the
that
other
is
side.
wow.
Yeah.
So, do you what are things that you've experienced that are different ways than you lived your life before that you could share that looking back you think have been important lessons? Like when I mentioned before, like how you view yourself, your identity, or also like legit, I'm really curious because we talk about cell phones all the time. I think it's hard to be present. I think I it shouldn't be as hard as sometimes it feels, right?
Right.
But I really think that being present is one of the greatest gifts and the things that is most important. But like, what is your
You bring up cell phones, like, that is I mean, working in an
yeah,
environment where it's like I had 2 cell phones, they were, like, tethered to my body, and
yeah,
if when I woke up at whatever hour when I was working at CNN, I wouldn't even smooch my husband, he would be asleep, I would go to my phones, I would start emailing my executive producer, and I'd be off to or I'd be reading tweets or whatever, and I'd be on vacation and even had been yanked off vacation and had to be on my cell phone. So I'll be honest, I still am not in a super healthy place with cell phones because I start like twitching a little bit when
you're
I
like,
do, I do. And I have a hard boundary with my man. I'm like, no cell phones in bed. And he has 2 kids and he's like, but I need to know like where they are. And I'm like, you like that is the exception, but no news in bed, no taking phone calls. Like he's about to gear up to make this movie. I'm like, take the calls, like take the phone downstairs. I cannot I can like feel it in my body. I cannot have phones anywhere near the bed. If it were up to me, like there would be no phones in the bedroom.
yeah,
I'm no longer living that existence where like somebody may call me and need me to run to, Nice, France to cover some
right.
story. So cell phones for sure. Living in Los Angeles, I didn't see this coming. I mean, maybe I kind of did. I was flirting with LA and taking those meetings, but it's been a really big surprise. Like, I'm an East Coast girl, I'm a Southerner, but then I lived in New
Yeah.
York the last 10 years. And living out here, there's a lot to be said about exhaling. And I think when you're living in New York City and you get so used to living in those smaller containers, and I love New York, like it will always be my home. But at the same time, you live in Connecticut, right? Like it's
Yeah.
this
By
notion of
a river,
by
Brooke.
a river. I mean, being in nature is, I mean, like
Yeah, yeah,
Ram Dass is right, like, go hug a tree. There is something about I have a palm tree, I've named it Palmy, in my front yard. I drink my unicorn cup of coffee under this palm tree every morning, and that may sound so silly to people, but it is just like I have come into appreciating little things like this, and being in nature and driving when we could pre-fires, like, up the Pacific Coast Highway into Malibu and getting in the Pacific Ocean and taking surf lessons. These are all things that are just, like, good for the soul,
yes,
Mm,
yes,
as we are unraveling, as we are, building back up to doing something anew. So nature is a huge piece of that. And I mean, I always knew my girlfriends were everything to me.
yeah. The thing that strikes you first when you think the thing that no one tells you is
Um, can I say that sex is better in your 40s?
love that. Let's just drop it. I
Go
love
there.
it.
Like, let's just go there as we are, as I've been, like
Yeah,
coming home to myself and learning about myself and going on various journeys, Lindsay. Like for me, I've always enjoyed it. I've always had a sort of an appetite in the
yep,
pleasure department, but this has been one of the choices I have made in this journey has also been like, okay, what don't I know about myself? And what parts of me that were so, like, in news all those years, like, clinched, like, waiting for the phone call. I mean, we can talk about right? Like,
right, yes,
and now, thanks to palm trees and sky and trees and exhaling, like, it does something to the body, and I think as we get older and we've done it enough
It
times,
makes you wanna go have sex on a washing machine or,
just
like, right?
like, or
Yeah.
in the grass, like, whatever. I'm just like, "Let's go."
I love it, and I think it's praise God, like, that's just amazing, and
Yeah.
it's yes,
I
well,
would say
because
I would say that. I would say that, and I would also say, we have the answers in us. Like, and I'll put myself in this camp, but, we take these retreats, we go places, we're searching for the sacred thing that's external when it's within us all along. We just have to get really quiet, and whether you're a meditator or you just do this thing called breathing, and sit still, that's where the answers lie. That is something I didn't realize.
I have one question, and then I know I need to let you go live this beautiful California day. When you came back from Hoffman, because this just popped in my mind, like, and when you had made that decision and then you shared it with your husband, was that what you expected it to be like? What
Oof. Um,
is that too personal? And
no,
so
no,
I
no,
get
no,
it if it
no,
is.
no. It's just a complicated answer. So I was clear with him about why I wanted to go to Hoffman. I had been very clear with him for many, many, many months, if not years, on how I was feeling in the marriage. We had done couples therapy a few sessions, but like it just wasn't. And so he knew why I was curious about things and going to Hoffman. And so we actually had on the other side, I told him the whole story, and he had a beautiful response to it. And we had a beautiful
Oh,
weekend until we didn't. Until very soon after, uh which I will never know exactly what he did or how I have my guesses and some, but like he found out about Peter. And I think sometimes with men or just humans in general, it's easier to point fingers and assume things
hmm.
and blame versus actually sit in the truth and sit in the sadness. And so very quickly that relationship ended. There were no questions asked of me, which was felt very violent at the time, but
Yeah.
was actually a gift because I think had he not done that, I would not have moved on quite the way I did.
Yeah.
Um, and so I haven't been in touch with my ex-husband since like the very beginning of the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just bring up so many things that I think are, that I know are helpful for people that are going through a lot of different pieces of things that are similar to what you've experienced in your journey. As we wrap up, what are 3 things that no one knows about you that you would like to share?
Um, then I'm really actually kind of funny. I think people are so used to people are this is what my man says to me all the time. He's like, "People have no idea, from watching TV show
You should
series."
do stand up or try and do improv. Do you do improv?
I mean, I'm obsessed with Kristen Wiig, so I basically wanna, like, single white female her, and, yeah, no, I've thought about doing UCB, so,
Amazing.
I love making people laugh and laughing. What else do people not know about me? Actually, the one thing I have not written about on my Substack, 'cause I've been hyper private about this, but it's her graduation this weekend, is I'm kind of becoming a stepmother. I have a 17-year-old in my home. That was the
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was the of all of the adjustments in my life of moving west, that has been the biggest one. That was very messy, and we are now on the other side where I love her to bits and sat with her mother at an event last night where she got an award ahead of graduation, but it has been a journey to get
Mhm.
there. So, that's something I look forward to writing more about. So, like, shout out to all the stepmoms out there. And, a third thing people wouldn't know about me is, I still have frozen eggs. They are like 13 years old this October. It is still a conversation I'm having. And that's what I'll say about that.
Brooke, do it.
Yeah.
That good luck on whatever you decide,
Thank
but
you. Thank you.
that baby or babies would be lucky, and
Thank you.
that's amazing. That is
Thank you.
amazing.
Life is wild. You just never know.
Isn't that the truth? Thank you so much. People
Thank
can find you on your Substack. What? They need to go subscribe and tell me
you. Yes, you
what
can
you
you
want them
can
to know.
subscribe to read the full thing, but you can just go to unravelingwithbrooke.substack.com to find me and read my newsletter every week. And you can follow me on Instagram at Brooke_Baldwin. Those are really like the two places I play.
I love it. You're the best. This has been
Oh
so
my
much
God.
fun. Thank
You are
you.
the
I can't wait to hang at some juncture.
Cannot wait. Cannot
Yeah.
wait. Been such a fan of yours for such a long time.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for joining me. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Mwah, mwah. I just want to say that I love Brooke Baldwin's honesty, and I love that she is really living in her truth, that she is taking the time to figure out what that is, that she has made the commitment to do that, even though at times, as she said, it feels hard. I also love her sharing the thing that no one tells you. I mean, that sex is better in your 40s. We should have a whole podcast episode about that. Stay tuned. But anyway, also, my thought, when she was sharing her story about signs, I don't know about you guys, but I am also a big believer in that. And I just think for me, sometimes it comes down to stillness. And it's so hard to be still. But just when you let yourself just take time and really understand that certain things will speak to you, I thought that was really cool about her story about the rainbow. And of course, I was going to point this out before she said it. She beat me to it. But those Post-its coming back into her life, I mean, that's pretty powerful, really, honestly. I mean, she didn't say that, but I'm like the power of the Post-it story. I don't think that's on accident. And I think that's just really cool. That really resonated with me when she talked about the opportunity that she had that came, into play a year after she had had the meeting about the Netflix series and how she just thought that they had moved on. But you never know. And we try to speed up our own journeys a lot of times because we think that we know the path that we should be on or what should be happening. And I know for me, it's like expectations that I put on myself, but also that I've allowed others to sort of, have their voices creep into what I think. I've really had to wrestle with that. And I think that all of us could learn from just sloughing off the expectations as best you can. Much easier said than done. But anyway, Brooke Baldwin, thank you so much for sharing your story. I love also that she shared the Vanity Fair article was sort of the opening for her, opening the door to do her Substack, which is Unraveling with Brooke Baldwin. You can follow her, and I strongly encourage it. It's at Unraveling with Brooke substack.com. You can find that also in our show notes, links to everything in the show notes if you want to subscribe. So thank you so much for being here on Things No One Tells You. We will see you next Thursday. Thanks so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you back here next week. Please don't forget, follow and subscribe to Things No One Tells You. And of course, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to leave a 5-star review because that's really what helps people get more listeners. We would love to grow this community. We are so grateful that you're a part of it. See you next time.